Thank you. And we'll see if we can get the slides up. But before we get started, interesting. So I get to be the guy that comes up after the snow metaphor, and then the improvised metaphor, which is exactly what we do. And so what we do in Seattle when it comes to snow is when it snows a ½ inch there, it's like probably 3 to 4 feet of snow for normal people like you. All heck breaks loose when it snows in Seattle. And improvise is what we do on a daily basis at Rotary First Harvest. And so I'm going to start talking a little bit about really the work that we do as Rotarians in the Seattle area, Washington, West Coast, and even nationally. And so I always start when I talk about our work with this picture, because this picture really represents potential. And the potential is, if you look at that apple, it looks perfect, doesn't it? And there it is on the tree. Looks like something you would see at the grocery store. Well, what you don't see is, on the other side of that apple, a hailstorm went through, pockmarked the entire other side of the apple. To the farmer, it is now no good. The farmer can't sell it. The packing house isn't going to take it. So what do? Well, oftentimes, that apple represents this number, and that's the amount of food that's grown in the United States that goes to waste. 38%, this is a USDA number, of the amount of food that is grown here goes to waste. Tragic, because at the same time that's happening, we're seeing people lining up at food banks, soup kitchens, meal programs, all around the country who need help. One of the things that Rotary First Harvest focuses on is getting produce into the food bank. So whenever I talk about food today, it's always going to be about produce. And the reason is because 60% of those served at food banks are children and seniors, two of the most vulnerable members of our society that need access to healthy food in order for children to do better in school, to socialize, to really reach their potential. And for seniors, it gives them an opportunity to stay independent. They don't have to make some of these hard decisions. If they can actually have some access to healthy food, it helps them to maintain their health and their independence. So Rotary First Harvest started out, like any Rotary project anywhere in the world, with one person. That's all it takes, right? We talked about this morning really motivational, really powerful presentations, all about what we can do as individuals. And here's a great example. Power of one. Our one person was named Norm Hillis. He was a Rotarian. He wasn't a farmer. He wasn't a trucker. Didn't do anything in food banks. He was a banker. But what he saw was hunger in his community, and he wanted to do something about it. So Norm's idea was, we're going to go out into our neighborhood and get everybody to take that Victory Garden model from World War II, plant an extra row, and bring it into the fire station. Then Rotarians will gather it and take it to the local churches, where they will then distribute it out to people in need all across the community. So it was a great idea. And then, in 1983, they had what we're going to call the Rotary First Harvest uh-oh moment, which is, the gentleman was a member of the club, this is the University Rotary Club, new member, was the chief of police at the University of Washington, sent out an APB to law enforcement all across Washington state saying, hey, we need extra produce for this project that we're doing with our Rotary Club. Anybody help us? 2 days later, he gets a call from the sheriff in Eastern Washington, a rural area of Eastern Washington. Hey, Mike, I've got 30,000 pounds of onions just down the road. Why don't you come and get them? You know, so Mike hangs up the phone and sits at his desk and stares at it. Takes a moment to compose himself. But what he then did is he picked the phone back up. And he started calling fellow Rotarians from his club to figure out what they could do. This is an opportunity. Improvise. Right? You pick up the phone, you find out who is in the network, who is in your Rotary network, who can help you move that product. So that becomes then the power of many. Long story short, they found a gravel truck, it brought it back to the Seattle area, and they dumped it out. This is potatoes. This is the way they did things back in the day. But this is a truckload of potatoes. They dumped it out. Rotarians got other volunteers in the community. They helped to repack it, got it up to the food banks. Since those early days, we've moved nearly 200 million pounds of produce. It just started with one gentleman who was a Rotarian with an idea. We do that by connecting and collaborating. That's really the DNA of our organization. It's the DNA of all of us in here who do work with Rotary, who do work with other nonprofits. You're so much stronger when you're connecting and sharing in the work with others than you are trying to do it as an individual entity. So I'm going to introduce you to some of our partners. And these are folks that we work with. These are folks that we worked with yesterday. This is Jack Wallace. Jack's a Rotarian. He's a potato farmer. Brings all these potatoes in out of the grounds. Not every one of them is perfect. Remember that apple I showed you? So we have Jack pulls potatoes out of the ground that are this big, that are this big. They're not all going to be able to be sold. So what Jack does is he cleans them up, he washes them, and he puts them off to the side of the warehouse. Jack doesn't have a truck, so what do? Well, we talk to this guy, another Rotarian, Ed Vanderpool. Obviously, Ed is very proud of his trucks. I love this picture of Ed. He's a great guy. But what Ed does is he has a trucking company that delivers in the morning, and then they come back sometimes empty in the afternoon. So Ed will have one of his trucks swing by Jack's place, pick up the load of potatoes, and then they'll deliver it to one of our food bank partners. In this case, it's Northwest Harvest. Now, these are the folks that have this wonderful distribution network that gets it out to food banks and food pantries all across Washington State. So you see in here, Rotary, there's no picture of Rotary First Harvest anywhere in here. What we're doing is we're making the connections between those organizations, between those resources to make these things happen. The only time we really get to touch the food is when we have our Rotary First Harvest work parties. 150 Rotarians, once a month, will come together at the food bank and they'll help repack some of the product that we get in bulk. And this is the most competitive person that we have. His name's Justin. If you have the misfortune of packing next to him, he's going to keep track of every bag he packs. He's going to keep track of every bag you pack. And then at the end of the day, he's going to notify you of the delta. How many more bags he packed than you did. He's a great kid. So last year we did about 9 million pounds of produce. This year we're targeting around 10 to 11 million pounds of produce. And we do that with a 1% administrative overhead. Because we don't own trucks, we don't own warehouses, we don't own anything. We simply are gathering those existing resources, putting them together, and channeling them to get that produce from the tree with the pockmarks all the way into the hands of those little boys that you saw earlier. So these are a couple of pictures of the Rotary First Harvest work parties. These are some exchange students. Met for the first time helping to repack 60,000 pound load of apples that we got into the food banks. One of the things, and this is one of our Rotaract clubs, one of the things that we really like to see at our work parties, it's a way for us to engage with other folks in the community. So if you're a Rotarian and you are going to a Rotary First Harvest work party, that's a great way to show tangibly, hands-on, the impact that Rotary is having in the community. And so we always invite different groups to come in and work with us. We work with a lot of growers. Jack is very large scale, but we also work with growers who are much smaller scale. Folks that are running small CSA type farms, folks that are running maybe 2, 3, 4 acre farms. There are 39,000 of them in Washington State, according to our partners at the Washington State Department of Agriculture. There's no way that we can have, with a staff of 3.5, we can have a relationship with all of those growers. And so, what we decided to do was to create a program where we're actually developing a network, we're strengthening the network of the hunger relief community to go out and reach into their own local communities to develop relationships with their growers. And that's what we're calling our Harvest Against Hunger program. Because when I see this load of beautiful fresh raspberries and beans, peas, strawberries, I shudder. Because I know that those are going to go bad within a couple of hours. So we have to get those into the hands of those who need the food as quickly as we possibly can. And so we're partnering, again, going back to our connect and collaborate model, using that as our core competency, if you will. We're partnering with AmeriCorps Vista, and we place young, recent college graduates out in communities to develop localized gleaning and produce recovery models. So they build a network, they figure out what are the attributes of the community, how can we make this happen? what does the food bank need? What are the strengths? What are the weaknesses? Are there large-scale agriculture? Is it small-scale agriculture? What volunteer groups can we partner with? And they start to build kind of a mini Rotary First Harvest model in that community. And we're starting to do it up and down the West Coast and a number of other areas as well. The really great thing about this is that it's engaging younger people in hunger relief. One of the challenges that we have in Washington State and the Northwest is a lot of people that were involved in hunger relief kind of aging out a little bit. And so with Harvest Against Hunger, what we've seen is this tremendous infusion of younger people getting, I mean, really involved. If you look at the picture of the Glean machine here with his beets, really goes and gets after it. He's great. His name's Joe. People like that want to get involved hands-on. They want to do something in their community, and they want it to be meaningful, and they want to see a result at the end of the day. And this is perfect for that. These guys are outliers. They're not all this young. But, you know, it's also a great way for families to get involved, to show kids what it means to be a part of a community, to help others in the community, to do what they can as individuals to be part of this broader network that's helping to relieve hunger in our area. They're learning about hunger. They're learning about agriculture as well. They're learning about some of the social justice issues that are behind agriculture in the United States today. Because at the end of the day, if you haven't spent time gleaning produce, you don't know how hard it is to get food into this food system. And so that's invisible to a lot of people. But the kids that are getting involved in this program, they really do have a deep appreciation for just how important it is to have a healthy, stable food system. And they have fun. They have a great time as they're doing it. But again, it's these great pictures of these younger men and women who take a leadership role and develop something that works in their community. And it's a way for us to engage people at every level with the work that we're doing as Rotarians. But why do we do it? What does it mean? Well, this is why we do it. At the end of the day, we can talk about numbers. We can talk about the millions of people that are served, the millions of people, the generation of people who have gotten produce from Rotary First Harvest. But at the end of the day, it doesn't matter a bit. What matters is each individual person that comes into the food bank. Every person has a story. Every person that comes into a food bank is an individual who needs help, who's going through a really tough time in their lives. It may be something where they're transitioning out in a couple of days. It may be something where it's going to take them a week or a couple of months, maybe even longer, to get back on their feet, to get their lives back together. But while they're in that time of need, we want to make sure that as an organization, we're putting those resources together to help meet that need, to help make them feel that somebody cares about them, and to support them so that they can move on with their lives and so that they can be the best person that they can. And so we started talking about Norm, Power of One. This little guy was picking up produce with his mom at Rainier Food Bank, which is a little food bank in central Seattle. And he's getting produce. I watched as he helped pick out strawberries and some apples and some carrots and potatoes that we had brought into the food bank. And it struck me that who knows what his future's going to be. He could be the next one. I mean, Hal Donaldson talked about, very movingly, his story. And we see young people coming into food banks. We know that our service is going to those young people. We don't know what they're going to be, but we sure do want to do everything we can to help them be the best that they can be. So that's Rotary First Harvest. Thank you very much. Appreciate the opportunity to talk to you.